So close to finish reading this. I'll continue and try and fit as much on this video as possible. We returned to Jerusalem, and that night my Faraj brothers took us to the most interesting terrorist of all. He was their holy man. In America, he might have been one of the nameless and homeless. Here he was revered. There was no conversation in him. If you attempted to address him, it was as if you had pushed a button on a tape recorder. He kept telling stories. His stories deflected any direct conversation and diverted every initiative. He lived entirely in the past. When I attempted to reach into his holodynes that controlled him, he would respond with another story. He covered everything with longer stories, more intense. The message was clear. Don't mess with my fragile world. I heard it and stopped my exploration. I just loved him as he was and turned my attention to other things. That seems to be our problem right now, is we're so stuck in the past. And our past was yesterday, and yet you wake up today and it's a completely new day, but you'll remember the stories of the past, and it's like, what do you want today? And if we can, deal with those things that wrap our brains up from the past, because they're just memories that served us then but don't serve us today. The members of the Peace Commission sat in a circle looking and listening to this person. He was treated with respect, but I lost interest because I recognized the patterns. His entire social system has bred him, and the system would have to shift in order for him to interact differently. I began to concentrate on those who held him in reverence. I began to quietly track one of the Arabs off to the side of the group. Other members of the commission tried to create conversation with the holy man, but it was to no avail. I remember I felt disappointed at the complexity of the situation and lack of informed help available. I left convinced we had not even made an impact. But 6 months later, he sent me a message of thanks. One of my Faraj brothers brought me a shoebox filled with keychains. Attached to each key was a beautiful wooden pendant. It was thinly cut from an olive branch and painted on both sides. The paintings were minute and showed the river of life flowing between an American and a Russian on one side and an Israeli and Palestine on the other side. They were well done, and the younger of the Faraj brothers who brought them to me explained that the holy man had cut each one from the branch of the holiest olive tree in Israel. Our holy man painted each one, he said. I looked at him with a question in my face, and he replied. He did this out of great respect for our work, Faraj. It is the most holy thing to do. This gesture of honor, all the hours it must have taken, was a living story of respect. When we left the Israeli airport, we were warned the Israeli security had an intense interrogation process, demanding to know every person visited, every person talked to, and every home entered, including addresses, phone numbers, and in short, every detail of the entire visit. The Peace Commission was beside itself in trying to prepare our stories so that they were all the same. With about 80% of the Peace Commission made of audience people observing the war games and the tracking solutions, this could pose a real problem. They joked about not being able to recognize a Gestapo general if he was in full uniform disguised under one of those little hats the Jewish men wear. There was no way to correlate stories because sometimes they did not know what was going on even though they were on the scene. They agreed to keep silent about everything. I happened to lead the way through the airport. When I got to the interrogator, she asked who I was and why I'd come to Israel. I said I was tired. I was with this big group and we had visited so many churches. I never wanted to see another church like these as long as I lived. She looked at the group, saw how tired and bored I was, and asked if we had ever been separated from each other. I said, I can hardly wait to get out of their sight. All I want to do is go home and be with my family. She asked me to identify exactly who was in the group. Then she gathered everyone together and passed the entire group through at once. No interrogation, no questions. She just processed us through just as well. When we live life most fully, life is a celebration. We are connected to everything and everyone in a holodynamic reality. We choose the dance we want to dance, and we dance according to our choices. In taking responsibility for the dances we dance, we are aware that no matter the dance, we are continually manifesting the qualities of intelligence we choose to manifest. New, more and more mature dimensions of consciousness emerge. Ramah Vernon and Barbara Marx Hubbard, for example, demonstrated amazing courage both in Russia and Israel. They took action in the face of overwhelming opposition and danger to their own welfare. They showed consistent, disciplined presence in the troubled spots of the world. They and all those who worked with them are examples to us all. One of the universal qualities of mature consciousness is that it is always loving. This means it is always unique, sensitive, joyous, vibrant, creative, synergetic, expanding, playful, multidimensional, and connected to all other intelligence, even from parallel worlds. It's transcending time and space and is always consistent, integrous, I can't say that word, integratorous, and all-knowing. Guess what that word is. I'm not going to struggle with it. In the long and short of it, life is the manifestation of mature intelligence, love, and love is the manifestation of all relationships. People are Roma and Barbara, presence, intelligence, empathetic, concern, no matter how negative people's actions may appear at any given moment in time. They walked into the inner nest of the Russian military command when it was still hardcore, communist, and in the middle of the Cold War. They negotiated for peace mentality when most of the world was locked into war games. They also stood in the face of Israeli fundamentalist aggression and Palestinian terrorism and negotiated for dialogues for peace. They did this on their own without government or outstanding aid. They paid their own way and stood their own ground. All those involved treated the dangers and negatives we experienced as part of the challenge inherited woven into setting up the dialogues for peace. How could we possibly manifest intelligent love without having something to love that was not yet intelligent or loving? How could our light shine without darkness? Once we understand that all negatives are invitations to us to love, we celebrate everything as a potential for love. Everything becomes the potential for life. It is impossible to enter life alone. It is impossible to live life alone. No one can dance the dance of life alone. Life is an invitation to love. Love for self means love of others, and love of others includes the love of life. Even for the particle-oriented war game participants, there can be no selfhood without community. The self we experience is the self we present to others, and others tend to perceive us and define us collectively as being that self. It is not the self we are, but it is the self we portray in the dance we do. Those who observe what is happening are the audience to the dance. The audience defines its position in society. This audience definition also serves as the gatekeeper of consciousness. This definition helps form the gatekeeper of the games and the disc jockeys of the music of the dance of life. Even from a wave perspective, the gates are difficult to open. The gatekeepers protect everything that takes place within an enclosed event horizon. We relate to others who are also in relationship with others, but we relate mostly to those who relate back. So our social content has a fluid side to it, one that is constantly in change, but it is contained. It is dynamic and it is also enclosed. We all live within enclosed, self-organized information systems. Relationships each have an enclosed event horizon protected by gatekeepers. The ceaseless fluid nature of change does not mean it is discontinuous. It is rather that change is part of the stable nature of personal relationships. Change is a constant, and in all change, chaos is a partner. Chaos is the partner of change, and war is the partner of chaos. It is one continuous wave continuing within specific event horizons. Change and chaos find eternal life within the wave. In the wave mentality, change is part of the dance. It is this fluidity of both our personalities and our social relationships that is the keystone to our essential freedom in the world of waves. Without fluidity, there can be no choice. Without choice, there is no freedom or manifestation of intelligence. Holodynamically, we view things differently. We choose to manifest love even when there is no reason to love. We choose love because we know our nature is to love. We know our nature is to love because we know who we are and the nature of our relationships with all dimensions of reality in all time continuums. We are love. This state of being supersedes all event horizons. The awakening. The next year, my Israeli friends invited me back to Israel to teach holodynamics to Israeli psychotherapists. They arranged ahead of time for me to visit each mental health facility, give presentations to staff members, meet with leading psychiatrists and other mental health leaders, and conduct seminars especially for therapists. At the same time, my Faraj brothers agreed to gather their entire people network together for one large seminar for Arab Israelis. We began to plan how we might get Jews and Arab Israelis working more harmoniously together. The 2 days before I arrived, the 2 younger sons of the family of my Faraj brothers were killed in a car accident. There were only 4 brothers in this family, and the entire family network went into 40 days of mourning. All the activities, including our meetings, were canceled. Our team members visited the shop several times, but were unable to awaken our Arab friends from their mourning. Death had won the day. We focused upon our Israeli objectives, unaware that death would once again have its effect on our visit. Mental health facilities are not usually places of fun. The people are mostly serious, semi-depressed, and hopeless for any real results. Locked into linear models of treatment, they keep trying to break the dynamics down into manageable parts and get continually frustrated. There is no way mental illness can be contained or treated within a linear model. Caught in continual war, locked into divinalized linear mentalities, having given up their personal power to a collective they cannot correct. Overwhelmed by a history that seeks to revenge what can never be revenged, and having taken on a mentality of their oppressors, most therapists feel hopelessly inadequate. The people are trapped. In each clinic, we presented the new holodynamic model, showed its scientific basis, demonstrated tracking and transformation of holodynes, and encouraged the staff to receive further training. By the end of 10 days, about 80 therapists gathered for advanced training. The first day of the training was dedicated to demonstration of holodynamic processes. Someone suggested we show an actual demonstration of how the holodynamic process works. They arranged for an insomniac, a person who cannot sleep, to be brought before the group to see if the holodynamic process could cure her insomnia. The person they chose had gone over a year without sleep and was literally dying because of it. In front of the therapist, I took a brief history and found a woman very sensitive about her family. She cared a great deal about the children and was always defending them. Sometimes she felt like she was suffocated or drowning. Often she felt she had to escape from some imaginary peril. I started a cluster of her symptoms on the board, and she soon found her telling her family story. Her mother had stopped the German Gestapo when they had forced their way into their home. Their mother was shot in the process. She later recovered. Her brave actions detained the Nazis, and this gave the children time to flee into the forest. Her father had managed to dive into the river to escape. He almost drowned in the process. She came to recognize the correlation between this family history and her seemingly random fears about protecting children drowning in peril. Still, none of her realizations seemed to affect the insomnia. We explored deeper into her relationships with her grandmother, who was very close to her. She had strong feelings of hatred towards the fascists who deliberately shot her grandmother at a point-blank range. She explained that her grandmother was thrown into a pile of bodies and left to die. It took her 6 hours to die as she saw it. I'm going to continue on another tape, hopefully one more tape, and we're done this book. I hope you're enjoying it because this book truly touches me.